My name is Maya Johnson. I am 22 years old, and last month I sued my own parents because my mother spent my inheritance on my sister's dream wedding. That money was not a casual gift. It was every hour my grandmother spent working double shifts, every quiet promise she whispered to me about getting out of our small neighborhood and building a life on my own terms. It was supposed to be my way into grad school, my ticket to a future in science, not a backdrop for flower walls and champagne fountains. The first time I realized something was wrong, I did not find a missing number in a spreadsheet or an official letter in the mail. I heard my mother laughing in the kitchen, describing Lena's fairy tale entrance and the custom floral arch to a wedding planner while casually saying, "Yes, we can stretch the inheritance. Maya will understand. She has time. This wedding is now." I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to the price of my future being sliced into centerpieces and cocktail hours. By the time I checked the account and saw the balance gutted, the betrayal did not feel like a misunderstanding. It felt like a decision, a choice to prioritize my sister's perfect photos over my education, my independence, my life. I did not scream. I did not collapse. I opened a new tab on my laptop and typed one sentence into the search bar. Can parents be sued for misusing inheritance trust for education? Suing them was only the beginning. Because on the day of my sister's wedding, when the music stopped, the lights came up, and everyone turned to stare at me, it became the most horrifying wedding of their lives. Before I tell you exactly what I did at that wedding, tell me this. If your mother stole the future your grandmother died to give you, would you stay silent for the sake of family? Or would you burn the illusion to the ground and make everyone finally see the truth? My grandmother Eleanor used to say that numbers never lie, but people do. As a kid, I thought she was just being dramatic. Now, staring at the online banking screen and watching the balance in my education trust shrink line by line, I realized she had never been more right. I grew up in Chicago in a small old house that always felt a little too cramped for four people, and all of my mother's expectations. From as early as I can remember, my older sister Lena was the golden child. She was the one with the perfect hair, the perfect smile, the perfect grades in the subjects my parents understood. I was the quiet one who spent weekends in the library, falling in love with molecules and microscopes instead of prom dresses and social media. When Grandma Eleanor died, she left a sealed letter for me and a separate envelope for my parents. My letter was short, written in her neat, deliberate handwriting. Maya, this money is for your education only, not for a car, not for a party, not for anyone else. Promise me you will protect it, even if that means protecting it from your own family. At 18, I had smiled through my tears and promised. At 22, I realized exactly what she had meant. The first time my parents mentioned the wedding, it sounded harmless. A family dinner, Lena gushing about venues, my mother flipping through her phone with photos of dresses that looked like they belonged in a royal ceremony. My father joked about budgets and not going too crazy. Back then, I believed them. It changed the afternoon I heard my mother in the kitchen, her voice sharp with excitement. I know the venue is expensive, but Lena has dreamed of this her whole life. We can use the inheritance. That is what family is for. Maya can take out loans. Graduate school is not guaranteed anyway. My hand tightened on the banister. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Then she read out a number and my stomach twisted. It matched the transfer I would see later that night. I checked the account in my room, fingers trembling. A chunk of the trust was gone, moved into my parents' joint account. A memo line said, "Family event expense." Family event. That night, at the dinner table, Lena chattered about floral styles while my parents debated plated dinners versus buffet. No one mentioned my education. No one looked at me and asked what this meant for the post-grad programs I had spent years working toward. They were so casual about it that for one second I almost doubted my anger. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe this was normal. Maybe this was what family sacrifices meant. Then I remembered my grandmother's voice in that letter cutting through the noise. Protect it, even from your own family. I waited until after dinner, until Lena had disappeared upstairs to call her fiancé, and my father had turned on the TV. My mother was stacking plates at the sink, humming some wedding song under her breath. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "did you move money out of my education trust to pay for Lena's wedding?" She straightened, her back going rigid. "We are borrowing it," she said, without turning around. "This is a family decision." "I did not agree to it," I replied. "Grandma left that money for my education. You know that." She finally turned, her smile too tight, too bright. "You are overreacting, Maya. It is not like we emptied it. You will still go to school. Maybe not the most expensive program, but you will be fine. Your sister's wedding is important. She is starting a family. And I am starting a life," I shot back. "Why does her fairy tale matter more than my degree?" My father muted the TV with an annoyed sigh. "Because this is happening now," he said. "Your grad school is hypothetical. Lena's wedding is in 3 months. We cannot tell hundreds of people to cancel because you do not want to compromise." That word, compromise, stung more than any insult. As if I was being unreasonable by expecting my own inheritance not to be used as a wedding decoration. "Is it compromise?" I asked quietly. "Or is it theft disguised as family duty?" My mother flinched, the plate in her hand slipping slightly before she caught it. "That is enough," she snapped. "You are not calling us thieves in our own home." But the word was already out there, hanging between us and settling into the cracks that had always been there, just hidden under years of holiday photos and forced smiles. That night, I lay awake staring at my ceiling, the glow of my laptop screen reflecting off the wall. I opened tab after tab, reading about trusts, misappropriation, legal standing. Every article raised the same question in my mind, one I could not shake no matter how hard I tried. If your parents choose someone else's fantasy over your future, at what point do they stop being just parents who made a mistake and become people you have to defend yourself against? I did not decide to sue them in a single impulsive moment. It happened slowly, like a bruise darkening over time. First, I tried to negotiate. I sat my parents down in the living room with a list, because lists make me feel like I have control. On one side, I wrote wedding costs. On the other, grad school tuition. I itemized the programs I had been accepted into, the scholarships I was in the running for, the exact amount I still needed from the trust. "We can scale the wedding back," I suggested, pushing the paper toward them. "Smaller venue, fewer guests. Maybe postpone a year so you can save. You can pay back what you already spent on the trust over time. We can make this work without destroying what Grandma left me." My father glanced at the paper as if it were a childish drawing. "The deposits are already paid," he said. "Your grandmother wanted you to be happy, Maya. She would not want you tearing this family apart over money." That was the first time I heard that line. They would repeat it later to friends, to relatives, to anyone who would listen. "Maya is tearing the family apart over money." "I am not tearing anything apart," I replied, heat rising in my chest. "You did that when you touched the trust without asking me." My mother leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We are your parents. We do not need your permission. We raised you. That money came from this family." "No," I answered, my voice low. "It came from Grandma's years of work, and she left it to me, specifically. You are treating my future like a piggy bank you can crack open whenever you want." The conversation spiraled from there, each sentence another crack across whatever was left of our trust. When I finally stood up, my hands were trembling so hard I had to curl them into fists. "If you do not put the money back," I said, "I will talk to a lawyer." My mother laughed, a hard, disbelieving sound. "You are not serious." But I already was. I met Rebecca Martinez 2 weeks later. Her office was high above downtown traffic, all glass and metal and quiet power. She listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. Grandma's letter, the trust, the transfers, the conversations. When I finished, she tapped her pen against her notebook. "Do you want the short version or the detailed one?" she asked. "Give me both," I said. "Short version. Yes, you very likely have a case. Detailed version. If the trust documents state the funds are for your education only and your parents use them to fund a wedding, that is misappropriation. You can sue them civilly to reclaim the money, but you need to understand what this means emotionally." "I know," I said, though I was not sure I did. "They will hate me." "They might," she agreed. "At least for a while. They might call you ungrateful. They might weaponize the word family. People always do, when they are caught." I stared at the copy of the trust she slid across the desk. Grandma's signature stared back at me, steady even in death. "Can you win?" I asked. "I do not promise wins," Rebecca replied. "I promise to fight as hard as the facts allow. And your facts," she added, "are strong." That night, Timmy met me outside the library with 2 coffees and the kind of hug that makes you realize how tightly you have been holding everything inside. "So," he said, "did you actually hire a lawyer?" "Yeah," I answered. My mouth was dry. "I am filing a lawsuit against my parents." He whistled under his breath. "You know this is going to blow up everything, right?" "I know." I stared across the campus quad, watching groups of students laugh and push each other playfully. Their biggest problem today was a midterm or a bad date. Mine was whether I could still call the people who raised me my parents after this. "Then I am going to ask you something," Timmy said. "Not as your friend, but as someone who has watched you kill yourself to honor your grandmother's dream. If you do nothing and let them keep that money, will you still recognize yourself in 5 years?" The answer formed before I could stop it. "No," I said. "I will just be the girl who let them erase me." "Then maybe this lawsuit is not about money at all," he said quietly. "Maybe it is about making sure you do not disappear inside a story where you are always the one sacrificed." That sentence stayed with me through every document I signed, every email Rebecca sent, every icy look my parents gave me after they were served. When the papers officially arrived at the house, my mother barged into my room without knocking, her face flushed. "You actually sued us," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what this will do to us? To your sister? To our reputation?" "I know what you did to me," I replied, "and to Grandma's legacy." "You are going to ruin Lena's wedding," she snapped. "People will talk." For the first time, a different thought slid through my mind, calm and cold. Maybe they should. The first court hearing was not dramatic. No gavel slamming, no shouting matches. Just a cramped room, fluorescent lights, and a judge who looked more tired than angry. Rebecca argued for a temporary injunction, a court order freezing what remained of the trust and preventing any further use of it for wedding expenses. My parents' lawyer insisted it was all a misunderstanding, that the family would resolve things privately. The judge skimmed the documents, brows furrowing. "The trust language is clear," she said. "Funds designated solely for education. Until this case is resolved, all remaining trust assets are frozen. Any further spending from those funds will be considered contempt of court." My mother's jaw tightened. My father stared straight ahead, expression blank. Walking out of the courthouse, I should have felt victorious. Instead, dread pooled in my stomach. Because the wedding was still happening. The deposits had already been paid. The venue, the photographer, the caterer, all booked with money that, legally, now belonged back in the trust. A week later, I heard Lena in the hallway on the phone, half whispering, half panicking. "Mom, the planner says the final payments are due. What do you mean the account is frozen? What does that even mean?" I sat in my room, pretending not to hear. It was the first time the word consequences seemed to reach beyond me. That night, my parents called a family meeting. We gathered around the dining table like we had for birthdays and holidays, except no one smiled and the cake stand in the center was empty. "We have talked to our lawyer," my father began, folding his hands. "He says this whole thing is an overreaction. If you withdraw the lawsuit, we can fix this. The vendors will be paid. The wedding will go on. Your relationship with your sister does not have to be destroyed. Lena looked at me with eyes full of accusation. You are doing this to spite me, aren't you? You never liked how Mom and Dad doted on me, and now you finally found a way to punish everyone. My throat tightened. This is not about punishing you, I said. It is about fixing a violation of Grandma's trust. You had other options, my mother said bitterly. You could have talked to us. I did, I reminded her. You told me I was selfish. You told me family comes first. You just did not mean me. For a moment, no one spoke. Think about the wedding, Lena pleaded. About all the people coming, about Daniel's parents. Do you want them to see this mess? To see you like this? The old Maya would have flinched, would have apologized just for making everyone uncomfortable. The new Maya sat up straighter. If they see anything, I said slowly, it will be the truth. That my future was turned into a party budget without my consent. After that night, something hardened in my parents' eyes. They stopped trying to convince me and started trying to isolate me. Conversations would fall silent when I walked into the room. Relatives sent texts telling me to just let it go and not humiliate the family. I kept going to court. In one of our meetings, Rebecca leaned back and studied me. You know, she said, even if we win, your parents might not have enough liquid cash to restore the trust immediately. The judge could order them to sell assets, house, cars, savings. You are telling me my lawsuit could literally cost them their home, I said. Possibly, she replied. Does that change what you want to do? It should have. It did not. If they had told me before touching the trust, I answered, we could have found another way. They made the choice. I am just refusing to pretend it is fine. Rebecca nodded. Then we need to be strategic, not just right. That is when she brought up something I had not considered. The wedding date, she said. When is it exactly? In 6 weeks, I replied. She tapped the calendar, calculating. Based on the court schedule, it is very likely the ruling will come right before that weekend. If we win, and they still try to go ahead with the wedding using funds they no longer legally have, that is going to create a serious problem for them. Something cold and sharp settled into place in my mind. A thought I would have been ashamed of a few months ago. What if the problem happens in front of everyone? I asked. Not just in quiet legal letters. What if the people they are so desperate to impress actually see what they did? Rebecca hesitated. Maya, our job is to enforce the judgment, not to humiliate them. I am not asking you to humiliate them, I said. I am asking you to let the consequences be visible. We talked for a long time that afternoon about liens, about collection orders, about what could legally happen if my parents refused to comply with a court ruling and still paid vendors with funds that should be restored to the trust. By the time I left the office, the bones of a plan were forming. I did not set out to ruin a wedding. I set out to make sure my family could not bury what they had done under white roses and curated Instagram posts. There is a difference between revenge and justice. The problem is, when you see your mother smiling in a designer dress bought with the money that was supposed to pay for your future, that difference starts to blur. The final ruling came 3 days before the wedding. The courtroom felt smaller this time, as if it were shrinking around us. The judge read through the findings, voice firm and unhurried, while my parents sat in stiff silence. The court finds, she said, that the funds in question were designated exclusively for the educational advancement of Ms. Maya Johnson. The defendants, Karen and Michael Johnson, knowingly used substantial portions of those funds to finance the wedding of their other daughter, Lena Johnson, in violation of the trust's terms. My mother's face went pale. My father stared at a fixed point on the floor. Accordingly, the judge continued, the court orders that all misused funds, plus interest, be restored to the trust within 90 days. If necessary, this may include the sale of assets such as property or investments. Furthermore, any additional payments made from the trust toward the wedding, despite the earlier injunction, must be returned. Failure to comply will result in enforcement measures, including the placement of liens on property. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like a countdown. Outside the courtroom, Rebecca turned to me. "You won," she said. "This is as strong a ruling as we could have hoped for." "I know," I answered, "but they are still going to try to pull off that wedding." She did not deny it. "So, what happens?" I asked quietly. "If some of those vendors have not been paid in full yet?" "Then they are unsecured creditors," she said. "And if your parents cannot pay them because they have to restore the trust first, those vendors will have to decide whether to walk away or demand payment in other ways." We both knew what that meant. 2 days later, Lena sent me a message. "You are still coming to the wedding, right?" I stared at the screen. After everything, she still expected me to show up and smile for photos. I typed and deleted 3 different answers before settling on one. "I will be there." Because by now, not showing up would have been kinder than what I was planning. On the day of the wedding, the venue looked like a magazine spread. White roses, crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes lined up in neat rows. Guests drifted in wearing polished smiles and expensive perfume, oblivious to the legal storm swirling just beneath the surface. I wore a simple black dress and a necklace that had belonged to Grandma Eleanor. It felt like armor against the glittering excess around me. My parents avoided my eyes. My mother floated from guest to guest, laughing a little too loudly. My father focused on logistics, checking his watch, talking to the coordinator. Lena looked like she had been poured into her gown, every detail perfect. Perfect, except for the tension in her jaw whenever she glanced my way. The ceremony started late. People murmured. I stood in the back row, hands clasped, watching as Lena walked down the aisle on my father's arm, veil shimmering under the soft lights. When the officiant reached the part about witnesses gathered here today, I wondered how many of them would still want to be associated with our family by the end of the night. The plan did not belong entirely to me. It belonged to the system my parents thought they could manipulate without consequences. After the ceremony, while guests milled around taking photos, a court officer arrived. He was not in a dramatic uniform, just a discreet suit, holding a folder that weighed heavier than any bouquet. He spoke quietly with the venue manager first. From across the room, I saw the manager's expression shift from polite to alarmed. He gestured toward my parents. The officer followed. I watched my mother's smile freeze as he introduced himself and handed over documents. "Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson," he said, "I am here regarding the enforcement of the court's judgment. As of this morning, a lien has been placed on your home and primary assets. Any attempt to divert funds owed to the trust to cover remaining wedding expenses will constitute contempt." My father hissed something under his breath. The officer did not raise his voice. He simply repeated, "You have been served. You are already under order to restore a specific sum. Any additional payments you make from restricted accounts today can and will be used as evidence against you." The venue manager stepped in, voice trembling. "Are you telling me we might not be paid?" The music, which had been playing softly in the background, faltered and then stopped altogether. The guests noticed. Conversation slowed, then quieted as people turned toward the commotion. Phones came out, cameras switched from portrait mode to video. Because of course they did. My mother shot me a look that could have melted steel. "You did this," she whispered across the room, not bothering to hide the accusation. For once, I did not deny it. But the worst was not the officer. That was just law. The worst was yet to come, and that part was mine. When the music failed to start back up, the MC tried to recover with a joke. "Technical difficulties, folks. While we sort that out, the bride's sister Maya has prepared a special message." I had not asked for that introduction, but I took it. I walked to the microphone, the click of my heels echoing through the suddenly too quiet hall. Dozens of eyes pinned me in place. My parents, Lena, her fiancé Danielle, his wealthy, meticulously dressed parents, extended family members who had told me for weeks that I was being dramatic. I adjusted the microphone. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "Yes, I am Maya. I am the sister who sued her parents 3 days before this wedding." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. I heard someone gasp. Someone else whispered, "Wait, that was real?" I was not going to say anything today, I continued. I thought I could sit quietly in a pretty dress and pretend this was just another happy family event. But then I watched my sister walk down the aisle in a gown paid for with money that was never meant for her. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my clutch. It was a copy of Grandma Eleanor's letter. I had highlighted one line. "This is the letter my grandmother wrote to me," I said. "She worked until her hands shook to save for my education. She wrote, 'Maya, this money is for your education only, not for a party, not for anyone else.'" I let the silence stretch, forcing every person in that room to sit with those words. "Our parents decided," I went on, "that her wishes did not matter, that my future did not matter. They used the trust to fund this dream wedding. When I objected, I was called selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. So I did the only thing left that I could do. I took them to court. I raised my eyes to meet Daniel's. His face had gone pale. 3 days ago, a judge ruled that the money was misused," I said. "My parents have been ordered to return every stolen dollar plus interest. Today, a court officer arrived to enforce that order. If you are wondering why the music stopped, that is why. Because while the flowers and the champagne look pretty, they are sitting on top of a debt my parents now legally owe to me." Someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." I turned to the guests, my chest tight but my tone steady. "You were invited here to celebrate love and commitment, but I think you deserve to know the cost, not the price tag on the decor, the cost of telling one daughter she is disposable so another can have her perfect day." I did not cry. I refused to give them the relief of thinking this was just emotion. I ended with a question, not to my parents, but to the room itself. If your mother took the future your grandmother sacrificed everything for and turned it into centerpieces and photo ops, would you still call what you are watching a fairy tale? Or would you finally call it what it is?" Lena stood there, bouquet trembling in her hands. For a moment, she looked like she might scream at me. Instead, she turned slowly to Daniel. "Did you know?" she asked him, voice frayed. "Did you know they used Maya's inheritance for this?" Daniel's parents stiffened. "Is this true?" his mother demanded, glaring at my parents. My father stammered something about miscommunication, about fixing it, about how it is already handled. It was not handled. Guests began to whisper and drift away from the dance floor. A few pulled out their checkbooks, trying to pay the bar tab themselves rather than risk being associated with a scandal. By the time I stepped away from the microphone, the room had split. Some people stared at me with a mix of horror and reluctant respect. Others looked at me as if I had killed something sacred. In a way, maybe I had. Not the wedding itself. That was already built on a lie. I had killed the illusion. The wedding did not end with a dramatic storm out or a runaway bride. It ended with something quieter and, in some ways, worse. Vendors pulled my parents aside, asking about payment. The venue manager demanded assurances in writing. Daniel's parents insisted on a private conversation in a side room that lasted far too long. When they came back, Daniel's mother would not meet my eyes. Daniel himself looked like he had aged 10 years in an hour. The reception limped on in a strange, fractured way. A few cousins tried to dance. The DJ, paid in advance, played on, but the joy had drained out of the room. Guests left early, citing babysitters and early mornings. The bouquet toss never happened. The cake cutting felt mechanical. At the end of the night, I watched Lena sitting alone at a table, her makeup smeared, her perfect dress wrinkled. She did not come near me. I did not approach her. There are some conversations that cannot happen while the room still smells like roses and spilled champagne. 2 weeks later, I found out through mutual friends that Daniel had called off their honeymoon and postponed moving in together. Officially, they were taking time to process. Unofficially, his parents were furious that their son's first married night had featured a court officer, a lien, and a very public airing of financial betrayal. The legal consequences unfolded more slowly but hit harder. My parents were forced to list our family home for sale. It was the only way they could restore the trust within the 90-day deadline. They downsized to a much smaller condo on the edge of the city. My mother's friends, the ones she used to brag to about Lena's wedding details, gradually stopped inviting her to brunch. She claimed it was because they were busy. I knew better. People love a fairy tale. They love a scandal even more. What they do not love is being reminded that underneath the curated pictures, there might be victims. One evening, after the house had been stripped of most of our furniture, my father cornered me in what used to be the dining room. His voice was low, almost hoarse. "Are you happy now?" he asked. "You got your precious money back. The house is gone. Your sister's marriage is hanging by a thread. Your mother cannot show her face anywhere. Was it worth it?" The question landed like a blow. Not because I did not expect it, but because a part of me had been asking the same thing. I thought of late nights in the library, of the emails from grad programs, of the years I had spent believing that if I just worked hard enough, my family would be proud of me. I thought of Grandma Eleanor, hands rough from cleaning jobs, slipping an envelope under my pillow with $50 and a note that said, "For books. No one else gets a say." "I do not know if worth it is the right phrase," I replied finally. "Nothing about this feels good, but I know it would have felt worse to pretend nothing happened, to smile in the background of all those wedding photos knowing my future was the price of their happiness." His shoulders sagged. "We were trying to help your sister," he muttered. "We thought she deserved something beautiful." "And I did not?" I asked. "Did you ever even imagine a beautiful life for me that did not involve sacrificing it to keep the peace?" He did not answer. That night, lying in my half-packed room, I stared at the ceiling and let the guilt crawl over my skin. The lawsuit, the wedding, the house, my parents' social circles. All collateral damage from a decision I had made and refused to back down from. Was it justice, or had my revenge gone too far? The question gnawed at me, not as something for a courtroom, but as something only I could weigh. When you finally stand up for yourself after years of being overlooked, how do you know where self-respect ends and cruelty begins? The house sold. The trust was restored. The court considered the matter closed. Life, annoyingly, went on. I moved into a small apartment near campus, paid for partly with the newly returned trust and partly with my research assistant's stipend. It was not glamorous, but it was mine. I bought my own plates, my own cheap couch, my own secondhand desk. Every item felt like a small, stubborn declaration. I exist outside of what my family decides for me. My parents moved into their condo. For months, we barely spoke. When we did, the conversations were stiff and short, like two strangers trying to make small talk in an elevator. Lena did not invite me to the second ceremony she and Daniel held quietly at City Hall after they worked through the fallout. I saw the photos online. A simple white dress, no elaborate venue, no walls of flowers. Just the two of them, a courthouse, and a caption about choosing what really matters. My mother liked every photo. My father did not have social media, but I imagined him looking over her shoulder, pretending the background of his daughter's new life did not include a lawsuit and a sold house. One evening, months later, my mother asked to meet me alone. We chose a coffee shop far from our old neighborhood, where no one would recognize us as the family that had turned a wedding into a public trial. She looked older than I remembered. Not because of time, but because of the weight of choices that could not be undone. "I am not here to ask for money," she said immediately, as if she knew that was my first fear. "And I am not here to blame you. I have done enough of both." We sat in silence for a moment, the sound of milk being steamed and cups clinking filling the space between us. When your grandmother died, she began, I was angry at her for leaving you that trust and not putting it in our name. It felt like she did not trust us. I told myself she was playing favorites. But now, she took a shaky breath. Now I think she just saw us better than we saw ourselves. I blinked. I had not expected that. I grew up with nothing, she continued. No weddings, no college, no safety net. When Lena got engaged, it felt like a chance to give her the kind of celebration I never had. I convinced myself that was love, that sacrificing a little of your future for her big day was something you would forgive eventually. I did not let myself think about what I was really sacrificing. Me, I said quietly. You, she agreed. You and the promise I made to your mother, to raise you differently, to put your dreams first. For the first time since this started, she cried in front of me without anger, without accusation, just grief. I am not asking you to say what you did was wrong, she said. You were right. The judge said so. The law said so. And deep down, so do I. But I am asking you one thing. Can we try to build something new from this mess? It will not be the family we used to pretend to be. Maybe it can be something more honest. I thought about saying no, about staying aligned with the cold, clean lines of the court ruling and never letting my heart complicate things again. Instead, I took a different kind of risk. We can try, I said, but I am not going to erase what happened. I am not going to pretend the house did not get sold, or that Lena's wedding was not built on my inheritance. I need you to stop calling what I did ruining things, and start calling it what it was, defending myself. She nodded slowly. I can do that, she whispered. I am still learning how to see you as more than the quiet daughter who will always understand. We talked for hours about boundaries, about therapy, about maybe one day sitting in the same room as Lena without flinching. None of it fixed anything instantly. There was no cinematic reconciliation, no group hug. But when we left, she reached out, hesitated, and then hugged me. It was awkward and brief and real. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and opened a new document on my laptop. Grad school applications, round 2. I filled out forms, attached transcripts, wrote personal statements. In each essay, somewhere between describing my research interests and my career goals, I left a small, quiet space for the story I never explicitly told admissions committees, the one where I had to choose between being the good daughter and being a person with a future that belonged to her. I chose me. Sometimes, when I catch myself thinking about the wedding, about the looks on people's faces when the music stopped and the officer walked in, a familiar guilt creeps up my spine. It whispers that I went too far, that I should have kept the peace, that no amount of education is worth a broken family. But another voice answers now. It sounds a little like Grandma Eleanor. It sounds a little like my own. It says, families that only survive if one person silently sacrifices everything are already broken. So here is the question I will leave you with, the one I still do not have a perfect answer for. When the people who are supposed to protect your future are the ones selling it off for their own idea of happiness, what do you owe them? Your silence, or the truth that might finally force them to see you as more than background to someone else's dream?